What is it like to be a Muslim pilot in the UK? Now, everything I say in this video is from my own personal experience and my own personal interpretation on things. So please just take that as a disclaimer. Now, first and foremost, who am I? I am a commercial pilot and I've been an airline pilot now for the past 3 years. I've worked for multiple different airlines. I've flown with hundreds of different people around the world. And now I'm in a position where I can offer that information and knowledge back to you guys who are now curious about how the aviation world actually works. The purpose of me making this video is so that you have an understanding of, if you are considering becoming a pilot and you're Muslim, of what it might be like for you. So stick around till the end of the video and hopefully any of your questions and doubts will be answered. Now, for me personally, my spark rooted from a very young age that I knew I wanted to become a pilot in the long run. And so I was never really interested in becoming a doctor or a lawyer or the traditional stereotypes that us British, Pakistani, Asians tend to fall into. Instead, I decided to pursue a completely different career path, and that was solely and purely due to the fact that I was just probably wired differently to other people. Now, that being said, I've had plenty of hurdles, plenty of trials and tribulations that I've had to overcome in order to get to this position. But to the same degree, I was very determined, focused, and passionate towards reaching this achievement of becoming a commercial pilot. And so that is why I'm now in this position where I can talk to you and offer back the knowledge and expertise from my end. As you can see, I'm in my thobe. Today is Jum'ah and it's the blessed month of Ramadan. So Ramadan Mubarak to all of my Muslim followers and anybody that is watching who is Muslim. Assalamu alaikum. Now, I've made a whole video about my background and how I became a pilot. So if you're really interested as to my background, please just give that a watch. It's very in-depth and detailed and you'll have a lot more insight as to who I am as a person. Now, let's just jump straight into the meatier topics. So first of all, how does one pray whilst flying? Now, if you're Muslim, you're probably aware, but if you are traveling, you are under a certain category of person that certain obligations are made easier for you. One of those obligations is praying, but it's made easier for you. Now, when it comes to the longer prayers like Isha, Asr, Dhuhr, those prayers which are 4 rakats, which means you do 4 standings, those prayers will be shortened. Now, there is Maghrib, which is 3 rakats, so 3 standings. That doesn't get shortened. Now, I'm not a scholar. I would say I'm very much a layman. So if you are concerned or confused about anything that I'm saying, please consult your own imams and your scholars, because that is not my expertise at all. My area of expertise is within the aviation industry and my interpretation of how I balance Islam with my job as a pilot. So coming back to the topic, how do I pray? Now, first of all, it very much depends on what time my flight is. Let's say, for example, I'm flying early in the morning, then what I'll do is hopefully before the flight, I'll have a small amount of time to quickly pray Fajr, Salah. If it is an early morning flight, generally within the short haul area, you tend to be back in your home base by the end of the day. If it's a short flight, then I'll be back hopefully before Dhuhr time, which means I can pray Dhuhr in my hometown. But at that point, I wouldn't be a traveler, so I'd be praying the full Dhuhr. Now, let's say your flight is throughout the entirety of the day. What would you do? Now, in this particular circumstance, you're going to have to time the prayers based off of either the sun, or in my particular case, what I do is, because I know I'm going to end up back in my home base, I just follow my home base's timings. So we use something called UTC time in aviation, and I just interpret the local time from the UTC time, and then I just follow my local timings for any of my prayers, so that it's easier for me to basically manage all of the prayers. Retracting a little bit more from that, how do I make wudu? So what I do in the morning is I make a fresh wudu, and in my school of thought, I can then apply something called khufs, which are a leather sock. In my particular case, I use a leather boot. That means if I wear that boot from the moment I have the fresh wudu and I don't take the boots off, then I can wipe over the boots because essentially it will mean that no dirt is going to be able to touch my feet because the boot is completely sealed, waterproof, with a strong material. So again, consult your own scholars regarding this if you're confused or you're not sure whether or not this is going to be applicable to you. In my particular case, I'm able to do that because I have consulted my imams and my scholars to understand whether or not this is something that I can do whilst I work. It's advice for even if you're at an office environment, if you're thinking, oh, I don't like putting my foot in the sink and then getting that awkward moment where, I don't know, someone walks in and they see your foot in the sink. There's nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned, but obviously from an ignorant mind, they won't necessarily understand that particular procedure that you're doing. So to the same degree, if you are thinking of a way of making that a little bit easier for yourself, then invest in some khufs because that will make your life a million times easier. My khufs are just Chelsea boots. So there's some free advice for you guys if you are in the work environment or an office environment. Now, following on from that, throughout the rest of the day, if at any point I need to make wudu to pray, I'll just quickly go to the toilets, make my wudu, and then wipe over my shoes because that will then be allowing me to have a complete wudu so that I can enter my prayer. The next question is, how do I fast? And obviously it's Ramadan, so that's a very, very valid question at this point in time. Now, for me, generally, I don't get affected massively by a fast. I think, if anything, I end up getting into a hyper-focused state where I'm actually more alert and more awake. So I actually enjoy fasting, and I actually enjoy fasting whilst flying. So for me personally, I know that I'm able to kind of last the entirety of a flight whilst fasting. Again, it depends on what time the flight is or how long the flight is. You have certain exemptions as a traveler anyway. So again, consult your own scholars, but to the same degree, you can think about it that Allah has given us as travelers exemptions. So if you're in this position and it feels awkward for you to travel and fast and operate an aircraft and fast, then you have the exemption there. So by all means, take it and use it where necessary. To the same degree for me, I actually don't like making up the fast later, so I prefer to just fast. Again, I always bring back up food, always bring back up water, just in case I need it as a precaution, but generally I don't ever see myself getting affected by the fasting whilst I'm trying to operate. So I generally just fast whilst I fly. Now there's a caveat to all of this. Make sure you have approval from the captain that you're flying with, from the management of the company that you're working for. Just make sure that there's absolute clarity that that's something that you want to partake in whilst flying, so that at least there can be some considerations made towards catering you towards that particular practice. So for example, maybe if you're lucky, a particular airline that you work for might facilitate it where they'll just give you shorter flights, or they'll give you flights in the morning where you can then eat your breakfast or your sahur, and then basically as soon as you've eaten you can start working, which means you're going to be fresh because you've just eaten, and then you're not going to be dragged out of energy by the end of the day. But these particular circumstances won't be able to be catered for you unless you tell someone. And not only that, it's from a safety standpoint as well. You're going to be operating the aircraft with a captain. It's unfair of him not to know that you are going to be fasting whilst flying. And ultimately, every single pilot is responsible for their own fitness to fly. And that is something that's outlined when you actually take a license to fly and operate an aircraft. So you have to be fully understanding of the fact that you are fit to fly this aircraft before you consider fasting whilst flying. If you don't feel fit to fly the aircraft because you're fasting and you feel tired and you feel like you're not going to be able to operate, then don't operate the aircraft, or break your fast and then operate the aircraft. Again, I'm not a scholar, and so you've got to interpret this advice with your imams and your scholars, but this is how I approach it, where I do fast whilst flying because I know that I don't have any drastic problems as a result of doing it. Now, if it's a long flight, a very, very long flight, then I may consider taking up the exemption and saying, well, I'm going to be a traveler, so I won't be able to fast for this particular flight, so I'll just make it up afterwards. That could be always an option for me if I ever choose to take it. But generally, I know that I'll be okay, so I tend to try and fast. Now, continuing on the food element, a very common question that gets asked is, how do you get halal food on board. Now, with the airlines that you'll find in the UK, you can tend to just bring your own food anyway, and most airlines will allow you to bring your own food. So generally what I do is I just bring my own food. If I have a specific dietary requirement, which other pilots do as well, not necessarily Muslims, but if, for example, you're vegetarian or you're vegan, then you can do the same thing. You can just bring your own food on board and eat that throughout the cruise or lunchtime or dinner time, whenever you want to eat it. You don't necessarily have to have crew food, if you see what I mean. So ultimately, if you're in a position where you're worried about the meat not being halal or not necessarily getting halal food on board, then just bring your own food. There's no harm in doing that. Prepare your food from last night. Now, another really common question that I get asked is, have I noticed a imbalance in terms of how many Muslims there are from how many non-Muslims there are? Now, of course, naturally, I'm not in the Middle East and I'm not in an Islamic country or by any means. So you're naturally going to fly predominantly with people that are non-Muslim. But there's a beauty to that as well, because you have the opportunity to then give da'wah, you have the opportunity to speak about religion to someone that might not necessarily think about it very frequently. I've had such nice intellectual discussions with guys in the other seat about certain topics regarding Islam. So if I was to recommend one thing, if you are considering becoming a pilot and Muslim, then do your research in the religion, because ultimately we can then be in a position where we can not only defend our religion, but also we can offer advice and offer support to people that are considering whether or not Islam is a great religion. Building knowledge and understanding of your own religion is super important when you're thinking of becoming a pilot, because you're going to be talking to very intellectual people who may pose very sensitive subjects to you. So you've got to be able to respond to those subjects and respond to those answers with the Islamic knowledge that you would have accumulated before that point. Now, yeah, you do share the cockpit with people that are non-Muslim. So this is where my interpretation of it is, in that you have to be knowledgeable of your religion, because you're going to be questioned on it as well to the same degree. If you're going to practice praying and if you're going to practice fasting, then you need to defend why you're going to be doing that to these people who are not necessarily knowledgeable of what Islam is and what your practices are. So you need to be able to portray that to them and tell them, well, this is my practice, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it. Now, another question that tends to be asked is, well, am I allowed to have a beard? If it's not already evident, I have a beard, so I guess I am allowed a beard. The only caveat to having a beard is that you can't have a beard that's so long that the oxygen mask that you might need to use in case of a decompression or any other kind of situation where you might need the oxygen mask, you need to make sure that that will seal around your face. And if your beard is too thick, then it might not necessarily seal. Now, for the women, if you wear hijab, predominantly in the UK, and I've noticed this at most UK airlines, they're very inclusive of that element of things. So if you need to wear a headscarf, then of course you can just express that to the company and they'll generally facilitate that. And of course, if you go to the Middle East, then it's even more emphasized and even more acceptable. Now, one thing I really wish Muslims knew more about when becoming a pilot is that you can find ways of balancing your religion around work. People often jump to the conclusion that it's just unfeasible and unmanageable, and it's a job not for Muslims, it's a job for non-Muslims, because Muslims need to be in a more stable environment where these variables are not always changing. Well, actually, being a pilot is about being adaptable anyway. So if you do have that mindset, then don't bother. Honestly, don't bother becoming a pilot. But if you have the mindset that you can make it work for yourself, the religion, the fasting, the praying, everything, that you can find gaps and find ways of making it work for you, then this is a career that would be great for you as an individual. And being adaptable with regards to that is something that I've personally found has made my journey through aviation as a Muslim much easier. Now, how do you become adaptable? You learn more, you take in more knowledge, you go to classes, you attend any kind of fiqh classes within your particular masjids, because the more knowledge you gain, then the more you can understand that, well, there's certain gaps here that I can use to help me with my career. The more knowledge that you attain, the more you'll understand that there's certain areas that actually facilitate praying and making your life easier when it comes to a job that you never even knew existed. I didn't know I could use my Chelsea boots as khufs until very recently, until I started flying, and I noticed this is a massive problem where I have to take off my shoes, take off my socks, and make wudu in this confined space of an aircraft toilet. So what did I do? I tried to consult and get information as to how I can make this easier for myself, and I, alhamdulillah, found the answer in khufs. And had I not tried and sought knowledge, I wouldn't have known that even existed. If you close your mind to the fact that there's no other pathways for you and that it's just set in stone, then it makes it very, very difficult to balance work life with Islam. But alhamdulillah, building knowledge, building an understanding of the religion will make it a million times easier for you. If I was to speak to any younger Muslims out there, I would say any questions or concerns you have with regards to the religion and balancing that with being a pilot, consult your imams, consult your scholars, but generally I would not let that be a limiting factor to your career, because I believe, and I genuinely have proven to myself, that it is possible to balance Islam whilst working as a pilot. Now, I hope this video has been of some benefit to some of you guys out there, and it's given you some more insight as to what life might be like if you are considering becoming a pilot as a Muslim. And if you're serious about becoming a pilot, I've attached a link to book a call in the description below, so feel free to book on for a call with me and we can discuss whether or not I can work with you towards attaining that goal of becoming a pilot. Now, I'm going to continue to post and continue to give you guys this valuable information that might help you in the long run. If you could just do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to my channel, go into the comment section and ask me any questions that you have, whether that's Islamic related or regarding becoming a pilot. Ask the question, because then I'll go through the questions and hopefully make videos regarding it so that I can clear up any doubts or concerns that people have. Now, that being said, thank you so much for listening, and inshallah I will see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.